On today's podcast, we have some amazing information, great work that a couple has come up with, creative, valuable insights, and life-changing experiences in a transformative journey that they've both been on, masters of their craft, investigating the paranormal and creative, mysterious forces in our world. We have none other than Rainbow and Mike. They've been on the podcast before. They have quite a bit that they offer to the paranormal community. Among those things, Dimensional Walking on YouTube, a great YouTube channel you should definitely check out. Rainbow also writes for a paranormal magazine. We will get into that. Definitely check that out. And they have a website that you can also check out. They have well-researched, informative data. They are, as I said, very talented at what they do, and they've approached the paranormal, high strangeness, crypto creatures, etc., vortex hunting from a very interesting angle, which is that of the creative process itself. They are doing important and necessary work, in my opinion. It's always a pleasure to have them on. They never disappoint and always provide interesting experiences from their journeys. If you have not been over to HEROparanormal.com, please check it out. Also, like and subscribe Hero Paranormal on YouTube and share it. From what I understand, it's the only way I'm going to be able to break through that algorithm. And although they will not monetize my channel for various reasons, it's the only way anybody can hear it. And I can actually get those numbers. It helps a lot. Also, search for Hero Paranormal on Patreon. For the price of a cup of coffee a month, just $5, you get everything. You get all of the content behind the paywall, and there is a ton of it. So if you like Hero Paranormal, if you like the Hyper Anomalous Esoteric Research Organization podcast and everything I delve into, that's the way to get the whole enchilada. Just hit the I got 5 on it button, and there you go. You're all signed up for everything. It helps me out a lot. It's not free or easy podcasting, and every little bit helps, especially when you're a small-time operation like myself. Let's get to it. It's going to be a good one.
Blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Blast off on another epic episode of the Hyper Anomalous Esoteric Research Organization podcast, aka Hero Paranormal, broadcasting from just south of the old Sherman Ranch in the Uinta Basin of Utah. My name is Ryan, the anomalous ambassador of the airwaves, bringing you an epic episode today. On today's episode, we have Rainbow and Mike. You may know them from Dimensional Walking, their YouTube channel. Although they have vast experiences in all things paranormal, crypto creature related, and of course, high strangeness. Dimensional Walking is a channel about everything paranormal, including Sasquatch, Dogman, UFOs, abductions, hauntings, aliens, contact, men and women in black, portals, witches, and skinwalkers. They have over 50 years between the two of them investigating and researching the high strangeness of our world. They do field research, basically in the trenches, in regards to Sasquatch and Dogman reports. They have years of personal experience, starting from childhood, that they share on their channel, as well as up-to-date news and stories that pertain to the paranormal phenomenon. Be prepared to experience a different way of seeing the paranormal and high strangeness lurking in the shadows. Rainbow and Mike delve into the core of stories and accounts, besides getting into the mind of experiencers and abductees. You can also find information at Mike's website, which is a great one, truthseekerforum.com. It is committed to the ongoing research, exploration, and enlightened discussion of the paranormal. He goes into witches, ghost ships, portals, you name it. He has over 200 videos on his Dimensional Walking, a Paranormal Journey on YouTube. And he has vast experience when it comes to Montauk. He's a great guy, and he's been on the podcast before. It's always a joy when he brings Rainbow along, because she's extremely experienced and a master of her craft as well. With all of their experience, they bring a lot of intellect, field experience dealing with paranormal predatory prowlers, and my favorite thing is that they both are in the team together. Rainbow has vast experience when it comes to the dark and the light aspects of witchcraft. And Mike has vast experience when it comes to being in the field as well. So definitely check out Dimensional Walking. It's a great YouTube channel. They've been out to many of the areas I've been to and have connected many of the dots. Dots connecting our world to that world beyond the veil. Mike has gone searching for portals, and some of his portal experiences have really stuck with me. He's explained some areas and the high strangeness that has taken place there. Mike also has vast experience when it comes to Montauk and the Montauk Project. We probably should do an entire podcast on just Montauk with all of the experience and information he has related to it. And I could do an entire podcast with Rainbow when it comes to all of the information she has between the light and dark sides of magic. She is very talented, also writes for paranormal magazines, and she's been just about everywhere, investigating just about everything. Both super committed to their ongoing research, exploration, and discussion of the paranormal. So you're definitely going to want to listen to this entire podcast. It went by faster than I expected, and we need to get together at some point in person, because we've only talked on the phone, via podcast, Zoom links, etc. And I have a feeling that if we could get together on some sacred site, maybe one of the locations of high strangeness here in Utah or in their neck of the woods, maybe in Nevada, I don't know. Somewhere in the American Southwest, I'm pretty sure that we are going to meet up at some point and do some research. And I think that that would give me a great window of opportunity to see them in person doing all of the amazing things. Very compatible couple at what they do, navigating the mysteries of our world. I'm very certain it would not disappoint. Well, Rainbow and Mike, welcome to the Hero Paranormal Podcast.
you are.
Okay, Ryan, we lost you for a second, but you're back.
Great. And let's see. I can't wait to talk to you guys again. It's always great when I have both of you. And you have a lot of experience with the paranormal and high strangeness, shapeshifters, and skinwalkers in particular. And I want to kind of delve down that rabbit hole. As you know, I'm interested in this.
Sure.
I think it's one of the most interesting things of our time. And one of my questions, let's just, I guess, start it off here. What means of protection, if any, do you invoke before and after investigating skinwalkers?
Well, that's not like going into a haunted house where you can sage yourself and, do some blessings and prayers and ask your guardians and the angels and the spirits to protect you. The skinwalkers are actually, they're humans. And so what you have to do when you go into a situation where they're around, you have to be very cautious. You have to be very aware. You have to go in knowing that you have what it takes to either deal with a situation or you don't do it. It's just, it's a different type of scenario. You don't deal with these types of dark shamans. And I think sometimes they can turn into some, weird creatures. They can get twisted too, according how dark they are. But you go in knowing you can take care of business, you stand your ground, you make sure that you have enough backup, and you make sure that you can deal with a situation, or you don't do it. Just don't do it. And it's how do you protect yourself from, evil? It's just like you have to have a knowing that you're a light worker and you have protection from your guardian angels and whoever. And then if I went into a situation where I had to deal with a skinwalker, I would have Michael go with me, but I would also have a mentor of mine make suggestions for me, and I would probably have other medicine people coming with me, because these types of dark shamans are it's serious business. It's something that can really, really hurt you, and they can kill you. They actually can either slowly do it, or they can do things that can manifest negative stuff happening, and it's because they intend it. They know how to do intention. They know how to do ceremony. So if you go deal with them, you have to be able to stand up to them, and that's not easy.
Yeah, I think most people, Ryan, really, all the people I've spoken to that have had experiences with them, they're not really out there looking for them necessarily. They don't really look. There isn't too many people out there actually chasing them down. A lot of times it just happens. They're either in front of your car, they're next to your car, they're running down the road, they're doing all kinds of stuff, and then there's an encounter. And really, most people
aren't prepared
at all. I mean, if we went out there, we would really, I don't want to say we would come armed. What we come armed with would be our energy, our energy inside of us, not weapons or anything like that. But that's the way we would approach it if we really were going out there looking for stuff or looking for skinwalker.
I think if a family asks me to help them out, you also have to pull the family in to help you deal with it, because a lot of the problems that come with skinwalkers is that they're very isolated beings and humans. They prefer to deal in darkness and isolation, and they target people. So try to be aware of your surroundings and not be a target. And if you have a family where you may have a family member that could possibly be targeted, the family has to surround the person, and you have to be one with that person, and you have to deal with it, because it's not something you can just turn the other cheek and just say, oh, okay, well, sorry, but you have to deal with this. It's not like that, because these beings, these humans are really just basically evil.
And I'm really glad that you mentioned that they're humans, because a lot of people get that mixed up. And I've heard that saying that all skinwalkers are witches, but obviously not all witches are skinwalkers. And I think that's a really important thing. I had a crew recently go out to Space Wolf research, and they filmed, it was a crew, Tony Merkel from the Confessionals and his crew, and they made a documentary called The Shape of Shadows, I think it was. And
I like that name.
Yeah, I did too. They're kind of a creative bunch. And yeah, they said they experience things every night. And it was one of those things, that was a question that I had, because you do worry when people go to certain areas. You hear about the hitchhiker effect a lot. And we'll get to that.
Yeah, we know about that.
I know you guys know a lot about that. There's actually, I'm trying to get one of the old guards to come on. Interestingly enough, my wife's work, and I'm not sure what this is, it's like a synchronicity that we can't avoid. Even when I try to ignore the topic, she will run into people, or I will run into people that have experiences there or have worked there, or it's just the weirdest thing. I can't seem to escape it. It just keeps popping into my life. And the area and people who have dealt with skinwalkers up there in northeastern Utah in the Uinta Basin. And I don't know if it's synchronicity or if it's coincidence, but I'm starting to believe it just is what it is, and I can't shake it. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, I do, Ryan. I had, I don't want to go into another subject, but I had the same thing happen to me with Montauk. The whole Montauk thing. Well, I had some amazing experiences, and it left me in this 25-year journey with all these people coming to me that were part of the whole Montauk thing. And but once it gets you, or once it grabs you, any of these type of paranormal subjects, it can hold on to you. And it'll bring in other people in your family will start having experiences. It is incredible. It's really incredible how it works. I don't know what it is or how it works, but I know it works. These things, these energies that pull together and attract each other.
Yeah, you can't make it up, because I'm really interested in the Montauk stuff, so I might have to go get a little tangential here in a bit and ask you about that.
Sure.
As far as manifestations of skinwalkers or the trickster, they're very prevalent in the American Southwest. Why do you think that is the case?
I don't think that's the case. I think they're everywhere. When I was in Egypt, they just have, every culture has a different name for them. So I think the Russians, there's different types of stories and legends about something dark out there that it's coming. You tell the story with the children, be careful, don't go out at night after midnight, or not after midnight, after like when it gets dark, twilight. And they often state, don't go out and walk the forest at night. Don't do this, don't do that. I think every culture has their version of the skinwalker. I just think that the Native Americans just made it that much more scary because of the actual name itself, which is skinwalker, which basically just means it's a dark shaman, someone who is wearing the skin of an animal, and they're trying to gain, or they have gained those attributes of the animal that they're wearing. Like if they want speed, it would be deer or a coyote for, the cunningness or whatever. Or it could be a wolf, or it could be feathers for the eyesight of the owl and the hawks and the eagles, whatever. So they try to gain the attributes of the specific animals. And in many cases, they have the ability to do this. But I don't think that it's just for us, because we're here in America, we hear that term more. But I think they have different terms everywhere for the very same type of dark shaman or human who is dealing in dark magic, and that's basically what they're doing.
Yeah, I have to agree, but I think in the Southwest, I've lived all over the country, and I have to tell you, when I lived in the Southwest, which is probably 12, well, actually, if you throw all of the different places I lived, New Mexico and Arizona and Utah, I guess it's probably almost 20 years, right? So I guess the whole thing was, it just seems like the Native Americans and maybe the shamans or whoever, they seem to embrace the story more than anywhere else that I have seen around the country. Because I lived out east, I lived in the Midwest, and I never even heard of a Skinwalker ever until I went to the Southwest. So I think it may have something to do, Rainbow may agree or disagree, there's quite a bit of the Pueblo Indians here. You think they have more, you think there's something more going on with that?
I lived in Egypt for a short while. That's where sorcery and magic started, you know? So it's like, for me, if you want to go to where magic is like at its core, it's, you know, you go to Egypt. Because think about, you know, the story of Moses when they were able to, with the snakes, you know, when they were able to make a walking stick and then they were able to change it and then there was the snake and then all that different stuff. I mean, to me, sorcery is old, it's ancient, it's pagan. And I think the Native Americans, there's a connection to me. I've always thought of the Native Americans to Egypt. But I think it's just at the core of what sorcery is. Certain cultures just embrace, and they haven't forgotten that the dark and the light and the twilight of the two. So the Native Americans are just really one with earth. And so, you know, I found that in Egypt as well. So I think that for me, it's just they embrace the reality of something that I think other cultures try to forget. And I think it's just more convenient to forget something than to look at something straight in the face and say, okay, I see what that is. So yeah, I agree with you, but to me, because I went to the Middle East, it's there too.
There you go.
I like that. You know, that's awesome, Rainbow, because it's one of my great beliefs, exactly what you said, that this is where the sorcery started. And many of the magical practices, if you compare them, like here in the American Southwest, compared to sorcery, you know, that jinn evoking or manifesting magic of the Middle East, you end up with a lot of similarities. And it's like, how in the world could you, like you said, there had to be some cross-pollination there. There had to be some way that this message or these dark adepts were able to get this form of witchcraft from there to here. It's always been a theory of mine that there's an invisible bridge there somewhere that people need to, it would be great to figure out what it was. And
right.
It's like you hear all these cultures, like in Peru, they have Viracocha, they have Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, very similar, again, you know, magicians or entities, and, you know, complete opposite spectrums of the planet. I don't know, it's super interesting. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's always been kind of a belief of mine, that's been a cradle of magic and everything kind of expressed out from there. Another question I had is, very little is publicly known about shapeshifters and skinwalkers. It seems like a very hidden realm, and those who know. Why is that? Why is it so hidden?
Well, with Rainbow, I know he's going to talk about it, but let me just say a few things that from my experiences. When I say experiences, really witnessing and from a standpoint of people, talking to people, basically. You know, the biggest problem we always had, or I always had, talking to people about skinwalkers, is they didn't want to talk about it. The Native Americans just stay away from it and are pretty well silenced. Now, you know, some of the experiences, it took a while, because I was very fortunate. I lived in New Mexico. I was a general manager for a big warehousing company, and we had a lot of Native Americans that worked for us. And one of the Native Americans who finally started talking to me about a lot of stuff Native Americans happened to be the great-grandson of Sitting Bull. So he was loaded with, he was just incredible stuff he talked about. But for about 2 years, he would not talk to me at all about it. In fact, at one point, he actually made stuff up, and he admitted it later, because he just didn't want to invoke whatever, because he felt very strongly if you start talking about these things, especially skinwalkers, that's going to draw something.
You attract them to you.
You attract them to it. That's what their beliefs are. They really do believe that. And so finally, he was more willing to talk about Sasquatch and some other type of cryptids and stuff that lived on the reservation. He was very open on that. He wasn't afraid of that, but he always would just barely mention. And he was a medicine man. He didn't want to even mention it. He was not going to talk about it. As much as I kind of tried, he said no, or he changed the subject. He said, well, let's talk about this or something else. But they just feel really uncomfortable about it. And they're the ones that are the source material. They really are. They have the information. Now, eventually, I've gotten some pretty interesting stories, not so much from him, but from some other people, which, later I can share or whatever. But go ahead, Rainbow. I'm sure you'd like to jump in.
Well, Ryan, this is my favorite question that you asked, because I'm a wild child. Number one, I don't agree with sweeping it under the rug, because just because you don't want to talk about it doesn't mean it's not there. So what these things have been able to do is hide in plain sight, because no one is going to confront something that they don't want to see. So if they're turning a blind eye to something that obviously is there, but they don't want to address it. And as a medicine woman myself, I walk in the twilight. What that means is that I'm in the light, but I have to peer into the dark. I have to, in order for you to know how to deal with a situation for somebody. Say, for instance, a skinwalker. I have to know how a skinwalker works. I have to know what kind of ceremony they do. I have to know what kind of animal form that they're using. I have to know every possible bit of information that I can get in order to solve a problem. And if I'm willing to go in there and solve a problem, I have to peer into the darkness. It doesn't mean I like it, but I walk that twilight, that in between. And I have to in order to do my medicine. So that means to me, I can't allow for this topic to be swept under the rug, because I can't allow for these things to hide in plain sight. And I always have felt that if we didn't do that, that shall not be named kind of stuff, right? Like in Harry Potter. What happens is what happened in Harry Potter. It came out for everybody. And so these things know they can hide. And I call them things because at a certain point, they get crazy in the brain. They just get crazy. And I've always felt that skinwalkers don't have any room in their ego for anything possessing them, because they're so full of their own possession. They're so full of their own respite, their own, not respite, but they're not their rest, but their unrest. So they're like the walking dead. All they can do is consume negativity and go after something, a source, to refill their whatever it is they're trying to regain, like their youth or whatever. So they target young kids in some instances. And so as a medicine woman, I can't allow that, because our children are everything, and it takes a tribe to raise a child, so I have to help protect the children. But what I do know from my understanding and from my experiences is that either I have to stand my ground and understand how to do it or not. But hiding the fact that they're there doesn't do anybody any good, and that's why they're more in the dark and in the legend aspect, and why people don't want to speak about them. So I'm a wild child. I'm like, no, let's not do that anymore. We have to bring them out in the open, and we have to address them as a society, because if you have a large group of people that are willing to confront something dark, you have a better chance of success in dealing with it than just me going out there with Michael and maybe someone else and having to deal with something that is really wicked and scary. And I've dealt with one woman that I truly believe was a skinwalker, and I literally saw her change in front of my face from a young woman into an old woman. And when I saw that, I realized that I came as close as I possibly could to danger, because she was walking towards me, and I had backup. I had a friend of mine who walked in the door, and he was going to stop her from doing something to me. So that was in my naive days. From these experiences that I've had, I've learned that you do have to have backup. in having backup, you have to also understand that if you're going to go and address these people, that you have to be willing to actually say, hey, I know you're a skinwalker. You have to actually verbally say it and address it so that they know that you know. And I understand why a lot of people don't want to have to do that. I get it. It's not easy. It's scary. But then look where we are today, where not many people want to talk about them. Where has that got us?
Yeah, it almost gives them more power, as you said, overall. Yeah. And I always think of that, what is that saying? All it takes for evil to persist is for good people to do nothing. And that comes to mind.
Exactly. Thank you. Right. That's perfect. Yes.
Yeah,
evil grows more powerful in the dark. We know that from just other things in our lives. If we don't know about things, they just start festering and getting worse and worse until they are so big you can't do much about it anymore. So that's the thing, to open them up and bring them forward, let them be exposed, basically, and then they're weak again. Then you're kind of equal to equal with them. So.
It does seem, this is so weird because even the literature, you try to find like the really good literature, like I'm thinking of various books on the subject, and even those books, like the books, there's a book by Clyde Cluckhorn, and there's many others, but even those books are super hard to find and very expensive, and it brings up what you're saying. It's almost as if it really is taboo culturally.
I think we have to look at the taboos of the kind of world that we create, because it can't just be a select few of people like me or whoever who's willing to deal with the topic. There has to be an education to this type of topic, because as you were stating, where it's able to live, it thrives, because there's no education on this. No one wants to talk about it. And I do know for a fact that in some Native American families that there's one person who is actually in the dark medicine, a dark shaman, and actually going into the skinwalker aspect of that. And then there's another member in the family who's a medicine man or woman who's in the light and who heals. So for every curse, there's a cure. But, you're always dealing with that battle of light and darkness. It's always going to be there, but you just have to figure out what side you're on and understand that you can win the battles. If you don't think you can win the battles, don't enter the war of good and evil, because you can get hurt. And I have. I actually dealt with a dark witch who made me extremely sick, and I had to have my mentor come, and she had to give me herbs and potions and stuff to heal me. But it was horrible. So I'm not looking for trouble. Sometimes I'm in my bliss and I'm oblivious to what's going on, and it looks for me. But it's because I have chosen the medicine way that I can't choose to have a blind eye to all this stuff happening. And I think that when it comes to children, I just made a promise to, the grandfathers and to God and to the goddesses that I will always protect them. And in order to protect them, I have to address these topics that are not fun to address.
I was going to let this one lie, but now I just have to ask because...
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah, you brought up something very interesting that nobody ever talks about, which is very true, and that is the children involved, and how... much like other dark arts we hear of in other realms or other cultures, this is a source of energy, isn't it? And something that they go after.
Sure.
Yes. When I was doing dimensional walking, and this is years ago, and and the dimensional walking is just going out there with my dream body. I actually think I was in New Mexico, and I think I unintentionally came across something I wasn't supposed to come across. And I saw a dark shaman, a skinwalker, and I saw what he was doing to a little boy. And he was actually draining his energy source. And I knew, and what happened was when I knew what he was doing, he turned and he looked at me, and I went, what am I doing here? Because it was in a cave, and it was present day, and I had to get out, and I immediately woke up, and I realized that they target children. And unfortunately, I think that there are many children who go missing. I think that some, not all, but I think there's some skinwalkers who target children, and they can target children who aren't easy to find. And so I realized at that point that it has to be my job to make sure that if I'm in a location in an area and someone asks me to help, that I make sure the children are safe. But when I actually experienced that, I was so frightened to the core of who I am, because it was such evil and darkness. And I was hearing his actual chant and the ritual he was doing, and I remember it to this day, and it's just like it was horrible. So, yeah, we have to protect our children. And yes, children are the easiest to target because they're innocent. That innocence is a sustenance that is, and then their youth is a sustenance to these, I call them creatures actually, because that's what they want, to stay young. It's just like the old witch that was young and then turned old. She was actually, she had all these birds in this huge altar where she was actually killing all these animals to keep her youth. And I just happened to walk into that situation. So sometimes you just, as a medicine woman, when you say I'm on the medicine path, you walk into these situations. But we have to protect our children. They're our future. And there's evil creatures and beings, and there's the satanic crap that goes on. And we have to protect them from all of this. There's different types of darkness out there, and walking the twilight, I see that, and it sucks. But then being in the light, I know that I have what it takes to help, and that's the important thing.
Well said. And it reminds me of an individual who I was asking some questions to, and he said something very similar. I said, aren't you scared going, into these places at night after these things? And he said, no, the darkness is my friend, and because like you said, you have to be comfortable in both the darkness and the light. So I think that's really good. As far as, sometimes these creatures, and I'm glad you said creatures, because they can get overly possessed in this the frenzy, right, of the magic, and they are often seen as crypto creatures, and Bigfoot sightings are sometimes possibly misidentified as other creatures. How do we tell crypto creatures, Wendigos, Skinwalkers, rakes, etc.? How do you tell those apart?
Well, Rainbow will have some input on this for sure, but I just got to tell you, I know I'm going to mix something a little different here, because I did a video on this whole thing. There's been a big push. I don't know if you've seen it, where they're trying to push everybody's thoughts on the Bigfoot, that it's actually a black bear. Did you see that whole thing? Have you seen that sign? Okay. Anyways, the whole deal is that's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous for many reasons, because a lot of people that I personally have talked to have had these encounters that were so close that you could never say they were a black bear. Okay. And that's the same with any of them. A lot of people that have had encounters with all the things you said are so close, it's really impossible to misidentify them. Now, there could be this gray area where some of them may be this or some may be that, but they're all pretty much what they say they are, especially when you see them close up. But the black boar thing, I just when I saw that, I read 2 articles and I just went nuts on it, because the simple fact is they're just trying to say, especially in the Bigfoot arena, that, you know, maybe you're not seeing Bigfoot, maybe you're seeing something else, but that's not the case. I mean, when you see a Bigfoot reasonably close up, you know it's a Bigfoot, and probably each one of those other cryptids that you mentioned, if you see them close enough, it's not only the visual, it's the energy that they give off. You know, Sasquatch gives off tremendous energy, very powerful energy, and all the other ones give off their own type of energy, and that's really what should be cluing you in on what that is out there. Rainbow?
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with Michael. It's the energy. Well, when we dealt with Dogman up in New Mexico, the one thing that he gave off was, because I visually saw him. I don't know if you saw him, but I got a photograph of the Dogman, and he was saying stay away, because it was a holiday and he just did not want anybody near him. What
did the holiday? I'm sorry.
Oh, it was one holiday that we were up in the mountains. It was like a Memorial Day weekend or something like that. And there were tons of people
that's
hiking.
True. There was a lot of people.
He was actually with a brown bear.
Yes, that was a weird thing.
And Michael told me to watch out for the bear.
Yeah, the bear was right in front. I saw the big bear.
Yeah.
And she got out and ran across the street. I was still parking the car, sort of. And this huge bear was right there, right? And I told her, Jesus, Rainbow, look at this bear. I mean, it was huge, Ryan.
Right.
It was amazing.
Well, I didn't run across the street. We were parked up
you ran across the street.
I love how he remembers things, you know. He was parked in the car. I was standing on a rock, and he didn't want me to go across the dirt road because he said there's a bear there. And I saw it turn on its haunches. I went, oh, my God. And I'm like, yeah. But then I saw a really tall, I didn't know what it was. I said, Michael, look at this hiker. This hiker is huge. It's so tall. And it had a hunchback, and I'm like,
yeah, it looked like it had a backpack on its back. Right?
And I'm like explaining it to him, and then it goes and walks off, and we both immediately in our gut got a do not walk any further, both of us. And so I took a picture, and there he was standing looking at us. And he was about 8 feet tall. They're not very tall, not like Sasquatch. That's tall. But, you know, I thought, you know, dogmen were taller, right, for some reason. But you knew immediately, and you don't have to be empathic to get what a cryptid is. But the one thing I think is so important that people need to understand is the intention of these things, because that intention is energy. And then once the intention is put out there, and you've got that feeling in your gut saying, you need to leave now, you leave now. That's exactly what you do. You leave immediately. And if you go, oh, I'm just gonna push that aside and keep on going, well, you're asking for trouble, because cryptids can not only empathically give you messages, they can make you feel things that you just normally don't understand why you're feeling this. And I think Sasquatch, unfortunately, is put in with all these legends and stuff of all these creatures and scary stuff, and it's not fair. But I do know that if you come across a rake or a Wendigo or anything like that, you're going to know it, because they look entirely different. Every description of all these cryptids that you've mentioned and that we've seen are entirely different from each other. They're not the same. And unless mass hysteria has happened and people from all over the world are just, maybe it's crazed, Matrix stuff, we're all seeing all these things, and we're describing the exact same thing. So you can't tell an intelligent human or a person who's semi-intelligent. Anyways, I'm talking about myself, not you, okay?
There you go.
But,
thank you.
But you can't tell us we didn't see what we saw. I'm not stupid, and I'm not going to agree with you, and I'm going to stand my ground on that. So I think if you see any of these, you're going to know the difference by the intention, the energy, and what you feel. And if you go into the woods and you think it's like your house and you think you can just do willy-nilly whatever you want, you're asking for trouble, because it's not, we can visit just like someone visits our home, but we can't act ridiculous. And I just think that people want to go and relax in the woods, but you also have to be respectful. And I just think that they all sense and know if you have a gun. They all sense and know. We have Bowie knives. We go with Bowie knives. They all know that if you're, what you're like. See, people don't look at things from the cryptid's perspective. They're always looking at it from the human perspective. I would think that if I was a cryptid, and maybe was a cryptid in a past life, I don't know.
Absolutely.
But I would think humans are the most dangerous thing on the planet. Forget, what we see from them. What do they see from there into us? It doesn't matter what I see. It's just that if Sasquatch is in the woods and he goes, oh, it's just Mike and Rainbow, I'm not too worried. But if it's somebody else that has a gun, he's going to go, oh, this is not good, and they're going to try to get away. But there's predatory cryptids. They just are. And so you got to figure out that's where they live. That's where they hang. And we go in there occasionally, and I think sometimes humans are in the wrong place at the wrong time. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Ryan?
100% agree with your comment as far as the misidentification, because in my experience, anything Bigfoot or Yeti or anything, it's something that always minds its own business unless it's provoked. It gets a bad rap. These other things, like you said, are more predatory. They're literally alpha predators out there, and they're looking for trouble. And there should be no coincidence as far as, did you see a dogman or a Bigfoot or a rake or a Bigfoot or a Wendigo and a Bigfoot? The Bigfoot is getting a bad rap just because he's in the wrong neighborhood,
That's right.
Yeah,
he's just hanging out
exactly. Or he's in his neighborhood, and we go in there. We're like, oh, he was scary and horrible. Well, no, we were the scary and horrible ones. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
People can just overreact over anything, And if what cracks me up, Ryan, is people who go in there who do Sasquatch research and they have guns.
I agree.
And then they never see them.
And they're just so serious about it, and it's like, leave the gun at home.
That's right. You don't have to bring anything. Just sit and meditate, hang out in the woods. Just keep on going back to the same spot, I always say, and they will come. Mm-hmm. They will come. And
I know people are going to go, oh, they're nuts because you don't go in and because there's people, I won't mention names because I don't want to get us all in trouble here.
Don't get in trouble.
No, I don't want to. Who actually state don't go into the woods without a gun. And and look, I also believe that there's aliens in the forest. I know there are. They're there. I know there's things in there that the forest folk. There's all kinds of beings that live in the forest. But I just think you have to be oblivious to your own gut reaction to not know where to go. And I don't want to be missing in 2 weeks either. I go hiking. So I don't want to be, hey, wasn't that woman who said? Yeah. What I'm saying is you have the warning signs to know where to go and what to do. But if you're in the research mode or you're doing anything with any of these cryptids or these predatory type cryptids, whatever, you have to understand that that's part of the paranormal. It's part of the darkness that I have to peer into. And if Michael says, hey, Rainbow, is this a good spot for us to camp? I really have to get my feelers out there to say, yeah, it is, or no, it's not. You just have to go in with a rational mind and not think everything is horrible and try to assess everything and check out the forest for the trees, right?
Mm-hmm. And I do agree. That the humans are the most dangerous because we will, like you said, we will go in with guns and out of fear shoot at anything in the shadows, anything.
Sure.
And each other.
Each other, exactly. And I think having a weapon like that in these certain situations where you have dimensional creatures which may have very mastered psychic abilities, you may want to be careful about what weapons you choose to bring because those could be dangerous to everybody.
Right.
So we have Bowie knives for people.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I'm not saying that we go out and kill. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we have to defend ourselves. I'm not worried about the cryptids. I'm really worried about humans. And we actually had an experience where we were followed by a guy. Mm-hmm. You know? Yeah.
That's what I go out with too. Is I take 2 Bowie knives, and just because.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Do you really?
Yep. That's all I take.
That's too synchronistic.
Yeah.
Go for it.
One for each hand.
Go for it. Give us the next one, right?
Okay. Kind of on this, on as far as these entities that might have these abilities, and magic seems to be among some of them. Crossroads seem to be places that attract dark magic. Have you come across any instances of locations where there seems to be dark residual magic present?
Let me just say this. I don't know if it exactly matches what you're looking for, but there's been I have a good friend that dowses for vortexes. Okay, one of the things that he would douse, I'd give him a map, and he would douse an area for vortexes. And the vortexes, of course, can have all kinds of stuff coming and going. It's kind of, I don't want to call it a crossroad, but it is a point on a map where if you go to that point, this vortex will have all kinds of stuff, good, bad, and ugly, basically, that will walk in and out of those vortexes. And you can, animals especially can sit and watch those things come and go. So, I mean, it isn't really a crossroads, but it is a point that I consider to be very reliable place to hang out and watch the action, basically. So that would be my answer anyways.
My answer is ley lines. I think that if there's certain crossroads, that what's underneath the ground in the earth has a lot to do with the paranormal activity that happens. I think quartz has a lot to do with it. I think any type of minerals have a lot to do with it. I think granite, because Sasquatch, they like granite. They like granite. They like all kinds of granite of stones.
Stones, big stones of granite. You'll find Sasquatch. They love it.
And so I think that the ley lines have a lot to do with what a lot of the pagans and a lot of the older cultures, where they actually built, like Stonehenge, and they built a lot of these old structures. And I think it has a lot to do with within Earth, within Gaia. And so for me, I think it's not just the portal aspect, but I think it's just her energy in itself at these crossroads is actually something that people can sense and they can feel. And I have felt that when I actually worked cattle, when I was a cowgirl in my 20s. And then when I went to Egypt, there were certain places that I went to where I would just get off kilter, imbalanced, and we've gone on hikes where we both got really dizzy. And so that we're walking underneath ley lines, and who knows if it's granite, if it's quartz, whatever it is. And you're going to feel that energy coming up from Mother Earth because of her frequency. So I think the crossroads have to do with ley lines, her frequency, and it has to do with the elements of how Earth is created. So I think it's all of that.
And I think at the ley lines, at these points or vortexes, I think all these things are drawn to those areas. So then if you happen to be in that area, then you're going to see or feel those entities.
The funhouse effect.
Yeah, the funhouse effect, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've felt that vertigo. I know what you're talking about, and it's unmistakable. You can tell.
Oh, yeah. It's like, wow. It just...
And I still remember your story, Mike, I believe, of that vortex in Washington, which made a real impression on me. Was it Washington? Is that correct?
Are you talking about the real big one, the super one, out in the eastern part of Washington? Well, actually, this one was in, I got to just remember, because we were in Missoula. So we came out of Missoula. We went south and west. So I believe it was actually in Idaho is where it was. I mean, it's all close together if you kind of look at a map. But, yeah, you're talking about the super one where it was so powerful that the sky kind of opened. Well, that was part of, you're talking about the Kiwani thing with the Sasquatch, and we were out looking for Sasquatch? Yeah, that was incredible. That was, in fact, I can even tell you the name of it. Nobody will be able to find it. It's called Elk Meadows. He claims that is a permanent one. He said that will always be here. Because the other issue is with Vortexes, they move.
Mm-hmm.
They move around. Cool. But this one is permanent. It's one of the largest, he claims, in the world. So
that's a great story.
Cool. And I tell you what, I buy it 1,000% just because of what I felt and what I saw.
That is such a cool story. It made an impression on me that I haven't been able to shake. A question kind of a little off of the more furry topic is some folks believe that shapeshifting is also done by reptilians or reptoids, and some believe that they are part of the ruling class. Have you come across any accounts that might lend any credence to some of these ideas?
Oh my God. Yeah. When I was in Utah, that's where I think I've had my two experiences with reptilians is being in Utah. Actually, I have three. I've had three experiences. One, I first visited Salt Lake City, Utah, and it was kind of the time frame before I had the idea of where reptilians lived. I had known that they were around, but I was walking. I was there for a convention, and I was just walking the streets, just kind of trying to check out the city. And I happened to go to the garage, this underground car garage, and I was walking towards it, and there was a security guy or somebody who was in there, and there was a long limo, black limo, that had just pulled up. And I could see the limo, and I was walking on the sidewalk, and I was looking down, and I was going to walk over to where this guy was because I didn't know where the mall was or anything. And so he jumps this wall and comes over to me. It's like a 3-foot wall. He jumps it and runs to me, and he says, get out now. He says, you do not want to be here. Do not go any further. And I said, well, I don't know where I'm going. I just, I wanted directions. He said, turn around and go that way. He said, please go. I don't want you here. Now, he didn't say, I was, on private property. He didn't say anything else like a police officer. He just said, I want you gone now. And he was like serious. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So I turned around and walked the other way. And I know it had to do with that limo. And I'm like going, who was in the limo? Well, when Michael and I actually moved to Utah, how many years ago?
Well, we've been here, 7 or 8 years?
Yeah,
just before that. Say 10 years ago.
Yeah. I had two experiences. One just back about 3 or 4 years ago of a reptilian. And then the other one was just before we were getting ready to leave Utah. I had an experience with one that actually shifted to male and female form, and it was very scary. So they are shape-shifting, of course. They can shape-shift to male and female, and they don't come into our lives very much. But the last experience was pretty bad, wasn't it? Yeah.
But I got to tell you, this is so weird and strange because her experience by the parking garage. Years before that, Ryan, I don't know if it's the same parking garage, but it's in the same location downtown in Utah, in that area where they have all these. There's a shopping center there. I don't know if you're familiar with Salt Lake City. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of parking decks for all the shopping in the downtown area because there's a lot of it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what happened was when I did the Olympics there, so we're going way back now. We're going to 2002, right? When I did the Olympics there, I had a lot of people that worked for me. And one of the girls knew that I was into all kinds of this stuff, into UFOs and paranormal and all this stuff. And she came to me and she said, I got to tell you a story. And it was so weird because Rainbow told the story similar. She said she was in that parking garage or in a parking garage similar to what Rainbow's talking about. She was down there getting into her car and she saw what looked to her as a lizard coming through the wall. Okay? Came through the wall, it changed into a man, and changed back into a lizard after they had eye-to-eye contact. Now, as you know, or maybe you don't know, underneath that particular area there's caverns, huge caverns that run under Salt Lake City. And there's all kinds of crazy stuff in there. And there's been times, not only that woman told me that story, and Rainbow has her story, which is she didn't even know about my story until she told, But the thing about it is a lot of stuff. And, I don't want to get too conspiratory or weird here, but for some reason, that whole area right around Salt Lake City, there's a lot of stuff going on there. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it has to do with reptiles, reptilians, reptoids, and their shape-shifting. And I've heard other people who talked about they would see them out of the corner of their eye walking down the street in Salt Lake City. It's just kind of a epicenter. Very, very similar, I think, to Las Vegas. I think that's another epicenter of reptilian activity. So, anyways.
What do you think, Ryan?
That is so, it's so interesting, both of all these accounts, because all of the accounts I have heard of reptilians, except for one, have been in very close proximity of where you are both talking about. And what's so, what's crazy is that the shopping, the parking garages, and before it used to be known as Crossroads Plaza.
Yeah, that's right. No, it was. That's right. Crossroads. Now you're right. I remember that now. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And they changed the name because they have the new one, right?
That's right. They
have the brand new one. It has the river goes through it and all this stuff.
And the new one, they renamed it the Gateway, which is also...
the Gateway, that's right. Yeah, I know. Yeah, right.
Also somewhat, but very strange that's kind of, in exactly as you say, an epicenter of these sightings, people who have seen these things in these seemingly underground parking locations. And it's just so weird, I heard of a story similar to yours that you mentioned, Mike, of somebody going through a wall and being able to just go through a wall. I mean, that's not an average thing that you hear. So that's really, really on point, kind of eerie. And I did have a friend who said that he worked for a company named Osmos, and he had to do some underground cables. I guess that's what they do. And he said the miles and miles of tunnels under there is unfathomable.
Yeah, that's what they say.
So cool. But yeah, great answers. My gosh. And kind of as we slowly get close to wrapping up here, werewolves seem to kind of be a part of just about every culture's history. Why do you think this is so widespread? Is it something to do with, well, I'll just leave it at that. Why is this so widespread?
Well, I believe in dragons. So I think that there's the possibility of two species coming together and creating something different. I mean, I don't know. I think that Dogman can also be confused with werewolves, totally.
Absolutely.
But Dogmen, to me, look more like Anubis. It's more of a dog, like a German Shepherd head. And I think what people see between the two can be confused. But I do know in Taos, New Mexico, a woman that I got to know told me that there's an area, not the Taos Mountain, but there's some other mountains on the other side, where there supposedly is a werewolf. And they didn't say Dogman, they said werewolf. And she said that she was actually, when she was younger, was with a group of people, and they were she was sleeping over, and it was like a girls' night, and she was sleeping up top on a loft area. And it was a full moon, she said, which was really interesting. And she said it was up a little high, and she woke up because she could hear something walking outside, and she just didn't know what it was because it was bipedal. It was on two legs, and she said it was peering in the window, and when she looked, she saw a werewolf. And so she didn't say dog man, she said werewolf, because it had that werewolf look to it. I mean, I think if you see a dog man to a werewolf, you would know the difference. But anyways, it turned and walked away, and she could hear it slightly howling as it was going away. And she was scared because she didn't want it to know that she had seen it. And they always know when you see them. You know, that's the whole thing, because they're very empathic. You know, these things are very psychic. But it turned and walked away because they're very curious as well. And I had heard from other people in this particular area that there was a werewolf, and that happened to be the very area that I did my vision quest many years ago. And what stuck with me with her is that she's like a no-nonsense gal, and she was adamant that it was a werewolf. And she'd been told by the other girl that she was hanging with there was a werewolf there. And so to her, she totally believed it, and I don't see any reason why there can't be. I don't think there's a difference between, you know, other cryptids and that. I think that in the forest, there's lots of different. Well, think about in Tennessee, where the mountains, the Smoky Mountains, whatever.
Yeah.
Think about the what are they called? Where they're the people who are just like totally. What are they? They don't wear any clothes. They're just like, they run around. They live up in the forest or the way back.
What is that term, Brian? I don't know.
I remember what they're called, but
like feral humans.
Humans. Yeah, and then there's there's people who have that, whatever that ailment is, whatever it is, with the hair all over the face. You could say they were werewolves. I mean, I don't see why there can't be werewolves. I just think that it just depends on what people want to see. What do you think?
Well, no, I believe there definitely could be werewolves, and I think sometimes there could be easily this confusion between dogmen and werewolves. And I think dogmen are everywhere in the world. Okay, so I think that could be possibly the whole werewolf thing. People see the dog or the werewolf, and they see the dogman, and I think. I think the legends may be a little bit twisted a little bit. That's all. You know.
I think we
definitely. Go ahead. No.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that's really interesting that you mentioned the feral people in the Smoky Mountains, because I was, they're just talking to somebody about this and evidence that there have been, a lot of mysteries that have been blamed on them, among those missing children. And so I just think that's really interesting that you mentioned these feral humans in Tennessee. That's very odd.
Synchronicity.
Yeah, synchronicity.
Yeah.
There you go.
And lastly, something that's kind of become, I guess it's always been a topic, but reincarnation seems to be a hot topic these days. I know a lot of people on the spiritual side who are lending credence, but what are your thoughts on reincarnation?
Well, I think that, and this is something that has just stuck with me, is that I wasn't a medicine woman in this lifetime with the knowledge that I have based on one lifetime. I have memory of being a priestess in Egypt, and I have memory of the ceremonies and the rituals. And I remember being in Egypt many lifetimes. And no, I wasn't, Cleopatra. Everyone wants to be Cleopatra, but I wasn't. But I believe that each lifetime we attract what it is, our essence of who we are, what we're interested in. And so I truly believe I've lived many lifetimes. And in this life, I bring to the table all the lifetimes of being a priestess, doing ceremony, learning about magic, learning about sorcery, learning about the darkness, the trials and tribulations of dealing with the darkness. I bring all that to the table as far as who I am, the woman that I am today. So I truly believe in reincarnation, and I think that we gain so much of who we are by living many lifetimes. So I'm totally very much into living multiple lifetimes, and I'm hoping this is my last.
Oh, really? Okay.
How about you?
Well, I mean, I'm not deep into the reincarnation thing. I mean, I've always said, and I don't know if this is from some alien abduction or something, I was always told that, you just, you move on to a new adventure, as I call it, a new adventure. Can you look back at old ones? I don't really know that. But, this was told to me that don't worry about death. You'll move on to this new adventure. And that's, kind of what I've always remembered. And I think some wise old alien told me that. That's all I can tell you.
That is really interesting. Yeah, it is. I think that there are some, especially with savants, with these children, there's so many cases of people having these inherent gifts, such as yourselves, or memories of past lives. And
sure.
It does seem as if there's some memory that it's not completely wiped clean, right? Some of it stays on the slate.
Right.
I had a very interesting kind of it scared me at the time, but I met with Kim Peek. He was the inspiration for the character in Rain Man, and I met him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's cool.
And I guess usually, you would tell him when you were born, and he could tell you and where, and he would tell you the weather and whether or not it was raining, etc. And he was very much like a savant. And he actually approached me, and he started talking to me about what he said was a past life of mine, which is something that you don't really hear, that he did this sort of thing, but it was among his gifts. And when I found out who he was, it really kind of made an impression on me, like, oh, wow, if maybe you should pay attention to this. It's been
That's right.
absolutely awesome talking to you guys. And let's tell listeners where they can keep up with what you guys have going on YouTube and other places.
Well, it's Dimensional Walking, a Paranormal Journey, and we have over 200 videos, and most all of them are our own content. In fact, very little is not something either we interviewed or we did a podcast like with you. By the way, Ryan, the one of the ones we did has the most hours watched of all, and I'm grateful for that. Okay. So anyways, it's been very popular. And then we have Truth Seeker Forum, which is my very long website on paranormal type stuff. All kinds of stuff on there. And there's, 2,000 or more articles and things that I collected over all the years and all my 50, 60 years of experiencing things. So it's all in there. And Rainbow had written a lot of things in there also for the last 7 years. And a lot of that stuff we took and we've made them into our videos too. So anyways, that's where Rainbow, what do you got?
And I write for a paranormal magazine called Paranormal Underground. And you can find the magazine at paranormalunderground.net. Chad and Cheryl Knight Wilson are the publishers, and they're fantastic people. So
that is so cool. Rainbow and Mike, thanks so much. So much knowledge, so many experiences. You're definitely masters of your craft. So everybody get over there and see what they have. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay, Ryan.
It's always a pleasure and an honor.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Man, oh man, it's always awesome to talk with Rainbow and Mike. They have so much experience, definitely masters of their craft, have gone in the wild, engaging with a variety of different crypto creatures and entities. Please head on over to Dimensional Walking, check out what's going on there, and support the other things they do. They are just genuinely and legitimately interested in the phenomenon and bringing awareness to many of the mysteries this world has to offer. Also, if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe Hero Paranormal on YouTube. And also check out HEROparanormal.com or search for Hero Paranormal on Patreon. For just $5 a month, the price of a cup of coffee, you will get all of the content behind the paywall, and there is tons of it. You get the whole enchilada for $5. Just hit the I got 5 on it button and you're all signed up. Until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off.